Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled Finding the Like-Hearted Through the Language of Love. Now, prepare yourself. This might shock you a little, but it seems I have inadvertently become a Swiftie. Well, actually, what has happened is that I've received a friendship bracelet, if you like, this, wearing it here. I've received and it's a bit like one of those that Taylor Swift fans make, and they make them for one another, and they swap them with song titles written on these little beads. As is written, there's some words written on here. You can't really see it on this camera. This came through the post on Monday, actually, and the wooden beads did not spell out a Swiftie song. Well, at least I'm not aware that they did anyway. Maybe there is one called this. I'm not really up with these kind of things. But it did spell like-hearted, written on these little beads here. It said like-hearted. Somebody had made this and wrote that little phrase on it. Someone who obviously knows me in some ways. You see, people often say they seek the company of like-minded people. You must have heard that phrase. Or finding like-minded people. You know what? I don't. I'm not really that interested in finding like-minded. I think if I was in the company of people that thought exactly like I did, I'd be bored out of my mind. I seek the like-hearted. And the lovely person that sent me this obviously realises that about me. However well they know me that well. Earlier that day, I'd been out walking with Molly. Me and Molly are not like-minded at all, actually. Our needs and interests are very different. But we are like-hearted, of that I'm convinced. And it was one of those days, and I like to do this quite every so often, every few days, or sometimes every day. I like to let her sometimes take the lead and to simply follow her nose, or at least 95% of it. I have to make the odd adjustment, otherwise we could end up in a right mucky old hole. But generally speaking, I'll let her decide which way to turn. They're much more interesting walks than the ones I would do. Mine can be a little bit utilitarian, hers definitely not. But we do always end up usually in a local park. And that day I observed, as I always do, many, many interesting things. And there was a couple in the park that I see quite often. They're not a couple actually. They used to be married and they walk their dogs together, but they're no longer together in that sense. So they can be quite interesting, especially when I see them on their own. But they approached me this last Monday. The man is somewhat cynical and he's always trying to draw me into conversations I really don't want to get into. But, you know, I'm polite and I humour him at times. And we were in the park and he muttered about, there was a group of very young children, probably about 4 or 5 years old. And they had this lovely they were all in a square and they had a big rainbow flag that they were all holding. And they were singing, "He's got the whole world in his hands. He's got the whole wide world in his hands." And I thought it was lovely to see them. He didn't think so. He made some cynical comments about it, really. Definitely not like-hearted, but I was with the kids, definitely. And I spoke with some other people while we were there in the park, some with dogs, some with their little children. I met all sorts of people, like I always do, a real variety of folk. Some like-hearted, some not so much. It's amazing the conversations you have. But most of them were like-hearted, I would say. They were there for the same reason that me and Molly were there. And it was lovely. Lovely conversations. So yeah, I'm always seeking out the like-hearted. Not necessarily the like-minded. I'm not sure they exist, actually. I'm not sure anybody thinks exactly like I do, but who knows? Who knows? I do remember very early in my journey, in my Unitarian journey, which has been going on for 20 or more years now, that I first heard the phrase, "You need not think alike to love alike." And I think it's the kind of spirit really that permeates the Unitarian tradition. It's certainly something that most Unitarians probably aspire to being like, but we all fall short. Of course we do. We're as human as anybody. Now, it's a phrase that's been attributed to Francis David, who kind of is considered the father of established Unitarianism following the Reformation. He was the spiritual advisor to King John Sigismund of Transylvania, who was, as far as I know, the only king who became a Unitarian. And he pronounced an act of religious toleration, the Edict of Torda, in 1568, which allowed the tradition to thrive and grow in that small little pocket of the world. Religious toleration had to happen in that country, and thank goodness it did. Anyway, that's a little bit of history. You're probably not that interested, but anyway. Now, I think it's a beautiful sentiment, this. We need not think alike to love alike. And it certainly fits in the principle of religious toleration, if you like. But there really is no evidence that Francis David ever actually uttered the words, a bit like one of those memes we see that are often wrongly attributed. Some argue about the original source of the phrase. Some claim it's the non-Trinitarian martyr Michael Servetus who came up with it, while others suggest actually it came from the father of Methodism, really, John Wesley, who asked in a sermon, a famous sermon of his called On Catholic Spirit, "Though we cannot think alike, may we not love alike." And I suspect that's the real source of the phrase. But it doesn't matter who first uttered the words. It's what matters is the meaning behind them. We should never become slaves to the words, more the heart of the matter. It's what matters is what's developed from the phrase. What matters to me is the spiritual depth at the core of these simple words. We need not think alike to love alike. Or to put it in a way that I prefer, we need not be like-minded to be like-hearted. Now, for me, that really is the essence of this free tradition that I'm a part of. We are non-creedal. We do not declare a statement of faith, but we're held together by a sense of love and understanding. They used to say in the 19th century, reason, freedom, and tolerance. But I'm not sure that's enough. Really isn't. I remember Stephen Lingwood once said, freedom, reason, tolerance and pluralism, he added an extra bit, are not enough. Not on their own. We need a message to give to people, good news to preach. What good news can Unitarians give to the world? Well, just this. Love. A holy love that transforms, that is powerful and prophetic and justice-seeking. This message has always been at the heart of our faith. And I think he's right. It's what we're grounded in. Now, of course, this is an ideal and a one that's very hard to live up to truly live up to. Everyone falls short. We can rationally think, believe in ways that uphold freedom, reason, tolerance and pluralism. But to truly live and radically accept someone who can think very differently to you or others is not easy, and it seems even harder in our current climate. It involves the heart, and a fully exposed and open heart at that. It requires a vulnerable heart, actually, to truly live, to aspire to this. For what if the person who thinks differently hurts us? It's not easy. My ministerial mantra has been for many, many years, come as you are, exactly as you are, but do not expect to leave in exactly the same condition. And it's a kind of invitation, an invitation to all. that wherever you've been, or whether you've been here for years and decades, or you've just walked through the door, it's an invitation for people to be who they are, to enter my space as they are, not as I would have them be. Not for me to pour myself over them, but to let them be who they are in their space. But it's also an invitation for me to do the same with them. And whenever I engage in anything with anyone, it's about being open to the possibility that change can occur. That you can come exactly as you are, but you may not leave in exactly the same state of being, in exactly the same condition. It is hard to come as you truly are, to be who you truly are. Most folk feel that they will be rejected if they come as they truly are. If they let others see that as they really are, that they will not be wanted. I'm sure everybody's experienced it at times in their life, and I'm sure we've all experienced rejection, actually, for being who we are. It's really difficult to say to the world, this is who I am. Will you still love me and accept me as I am? Will you still love me tomorrow? But you see, openness isn't just about that. Openness is about allowing the other to be who they are. It's very easy to pronounce, this is me, this is my journey, this is where I've been, this is what I have done. That's just telling people things. Openness is about allowing the other to be who they are. That's the true welcome. And I believe that's what's at the heart of love. This is the radical love, I think, that is at the heart of my understanding of my own tradition at its best. But of course, we all fall short. But this is to act in love. Today I would say this is the example of deeds more than creeds. It's easy to say what you are and what you believe, but to live that way is much more of a challenge. Oh, it is for me. But it's what I aspire to. And I believe it's what's at the heart of this free tradition I'm a part of, that I serve, actually. I try to carry that with me. Last Sunday afternoon, I attended the Altrincham Interfaith Group afternoon tea. It was a lovely occasion. Many people coming together who think differently about their faith, their belief, but I believe at the heart of all of us that were present that day is the same loving spirit, but we may just understand it differently. Several representatives from all the different traditions were invited to offer blessings at the commencement of this tea. I was one of them. And I thought, what am I going to say? So I just let my heart rule, and I said something. Actually, I just kind of adapted the thing that I would say at the beginning of everything I do, every service of worship, every group, anything I host. I say similar words to invite people. And it goes something like this. I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along these lines. Let us invite a loving presence, however we may understand it, to be amongst us and to awaken from deep down within us all. May we open our hearts, listen with the ears of our hearts, and speak our truth in love. For the language of the heart is universal. And that was the invitation. There were some really interesting speakers during the tea. And each of them spoke about the different kind of work they're engaging within the wider community. Really important work, actually. Such vital work in what seems to be very divisive times. I was particularly impressed by I was impressed by all of them, but one of the local council had actually just been re-elected, actually, a couple of days before. Councillor Eve Parker being one of them. Now, Eve is the community cohesion lead and in 2024 launched Trafford Faith Action Network. She's Dr. Eve Parker, actually, is a theologian and on the faculty of the School of Religion and Theology at the University of Manchester. But she wasn't talking about that. But one thing that she did say really resonated with me, a theme to what she said, and that was that tolerance in and of itself is not enough. Something deeper and more connective and collective, this recognition that we're of the same heart, I would say, is also required. It's something I felt for some time, actually. I feel something deeper than just mere tolerance is required. It needs to be something rooted in loving understanding, a recognition that we're all formed from the same heart and the same spirit, despite what it sometimes seems our differences, our interpretive differences. Love and respect, more than just tolerance, must be at the heart of things. Of course, tolerance is a really good starting point, but I think we need something more and something deeper. And that's what I heard Eve saying anyway last Sunday. And it touched my heart. It was the language of the heart, and I heard it through the ears of my heart. Thank you for that. On Tuesday morning, I was chatting with a young man, and he himself is on a spiritual journey. He's exploring all sorts. He's open to try and get to the heart of things. He seems particularly drawn more to the Eastern traditions. And then he asked me, he said to me, well, you're a priest, aren't you? And I said, well, I'm not exactly a priest. Not really. I tried to explain to him the difference between a minister and a priest. And, functionally they're the same thing, but they're not really, in the sense of how the role is understood and on a spiritual sense, I guess. And as we were talking, he said, oh yes, you're a unilateral minister, aren't you? And I said, well, no, I'm not exactly. I said, I'm a Unitarian minister, but I didn't mind. It was funny. It made me smile. People often, it reminded me of a conversation I had a few months ago with somebody in the park. A man who came up to me and said, oh, you're that humanitarian minister, aren't you? Which I actually quite liked that as a it seems a more accurate description in some ways. A lovely way to be seen, actually. Now, so I was talking with this young man, and I explained to some degree about our tradition. Before, as we were talking and getting quite in depth, I was distracted by Molly's need to have a poo outside the town hall, so the conversation kind of came to an end. But no doubt it will continue. But that's my life. We're getting these deep, meaningful things, and then certain practicalities take hold, which is probably a good thing before I get too wrapped up in my own nonsense at times, pontificating about life. But what it did remind me was how difficult it is to articulate my own faith tradition. I'm sure people come up with a variety of things at different times. They used to say in the 19th century that there's three simple statements: freedom, reason, and tolerance. Now, over the years, I've kind of wrestled with these because I'm not quite sure that they're quite right for our times or quite accurate for my own sense, really. I think there's more to it, actually. So I've been thinking about it again, and I've thought about this many times. So I've come up with three of my own. Would you like to hear them? Well, you're going to hear them, obviously, if you're watching this video. So here we go. So the one element, and this is not a new idea, by the way, is how we understand authority. I think this is key to the tradition, actually. We say that authority lays within the enlightened conscience of the individual, that we are not only free but encouraged to seek our own truth in matters of faith, that personal experience and reflection upon these experiences is the final authority. No one can tell us what to believe, although we do it in community, so that's important too. It doesn't mean we believe just whatever we want to believe, just like that, like from without foundation. More what our experiences teach us. It's not that we believe what we want, we believe what we must. Interesting. The second is respect and a celebration of difference thinking, not thinking alike, if you like. Now, some would describe that, historically, that would be called the tolerance element. But like I've said, I don't think tolerance is quite enough. I am definitely with Eve here. I'm not decrying tolerance, by the way. If only we human beings could be more tolerant of one another. We are living in intolerant times, I think. It seems amplified at this time. But the problem with tolerance is that I still hear an element of judgment in tolerance. As if in claiming this word, people are saying, I am tolerating you and your views, but I still think you're a crank. So I don't think tolerance is quite enough. I don't see respect and celebration in tolerance. There's still a sense of superiority in it. If I accept that I have the freedom to reach my own conclusions and believe that this is a wonderful thing for me, then to judge or merely tolerate another for their conclusions, I don't think that's really respecting their humanity and celebrating their conclusions or what they come to. There's judgment in it, and more than anything, there's a lack of humility in it. Tolerance is great, but it's not quite enough, I think. More is required, really. And this leads me to the third aspect that I've identified, which I see actually at the heart of the tradition I'm a part of, is real humility. And it's a real humility that breeds openness to something more than my limited capacity. It stems from the idea that whatever conclusions I have reached today, that truth is not sealed. And I celebrate this. I think this is a wonderful thing to celebrate, because humility, I want to celebrate that humility breeds this openness to more that can fly free. If we rejoice in the truth that others may reach something other and more, I can then experience more by sharing with them if I'm open-minded, but more than open-minded, if I'm open in my heart and in my soul. For truth is subjective. It depends how the angle of vision, if you like. I know my own conclusions have shifted and continue to shift. But at the heart of it is this love, to share the same kind of heart, not realizing that I can still love alike even if my thinking has changed. And it's changed because my experiences have changed. My reflections on my experience have changed. My engagement with others has allowed that to happen. It's not something that can be done in isolation. It's why we congregate together as a community. More is revealed. So these are my three: freedom, respect, and humility. They're the keys that I've come to about my own, which is why I call myself a Unitarian, I guess. Three little words: freedom, respect, and humility. They kind of sum up my own understanding. People experience and understand the spiritual aspects of their lives in many varied and different ways. And when we try to explain, to articulate these, it can be a challenge. People use words differently. People use different words to speak of the same thing. And people don't mean the same thing when they use these words. And the problem with human beings, I find, is that we try and control the language. And if we know anything about language, if you know anything about etymology, language is always growing and evolving and developing. Words don't mean what they once meant. And yet, it's the best way we have to articulate and communicate. What Paul Tillich said, that which reveals also hides. So language, especially in theological language, revealing truth is also hiding truth. So we never see and experience what another person has. You cannot truly walk in another's shoes, actually. Or if you do, they don't fit comfortably. But the gift is to share, to come together, to congregate, I guess. to minister, in my sense, to serve. One of the great blessings of my job is the people I often meet. Often complete strangers, actually. People I don't know just come and tell me things, especially when they discover what I am, which is why I don't advertise it when I'm walking around. People always find out. People share experiences that their rational minds can't really make sense of at times, and it's a real blessing for people to share these things with me. Moments that have touched them in deep ways. I remember once going for a radio interview in Radio Alti, and Ken Garrity suddenly starting sharing these experiences that he said he'd never shared with anybody before. And there he is publicly broadcasting it in Altrincham. It was an incredible thing, actually. Really touched my heart, actually. It was a real conversation of the heart. It opened up the ears of my heart as we shared together in a public platform like we were having a chat in his kitchen. It was phenomenal, beautiful. But it happens all over the place. Now, these experiences have two common themes I've noticed. One being they're transformative. You never forget them once they've happened. They touch your soul in a way that's never quite the same. But don't expect to leave in exactly the same condition. Remember me, I said that. How humbling and blessing it can be. But the other is that they don't talk about it. There is a fear of being ridiculed or misunderstood or being seen as a crank, I guess. Something strange. So we don't. But we should, because people are having these experiences all the time. I remember an occasion many years, well, not many, a few years ago, when I was going to buy this new laptop computer that I'm doing this on. Had it a few years now. But something incredible happened when I was just in the Curry's down the road. It's just Curry's now, I can't remember it. It's not called that probably now, is it? Anyway, whatever it was called, I forget. Memory's a weird thing. But I remember going and buying this new computer. I don't know what I was looking for. And obviously the person selling it then has to go through all these things. And during the conversation, I had to fill in my occupation and why I was using it. And it came up what I did as a job. Oh dear. Because sometimes I just want to get on with my life and not talk about what I do. Like sometimes I just want to walk the dog, you know. But this man took the opportunity. He took the opportunity to recount an experience that had happened to him many years ago. Something that had transformed him and his experience of life, a moment of transformation. He made me smile, actually, brother, as he talked about his experience. But it wasn't that. It was his constant insistence that he was not a religious man. Couldn't get on with religion and religious dogma. But he couldn't stop. This experience had touched him in ways. But he kept it private to himself, really. But it had affected him in every area of his life. It changed him that day. As he spoke, I just smiled and listened and told him that many people have these kind of, like Ken Garrity did that time. Including myself, of course, shared a couple of my own. And how there is these two characteristics that are so common to them. One is how they're transformative, but the other is this fear of talking about them. For this fear of being misunderstood or this inability to articulate the experience. It's that they're beyond language and words. So much is. Now, there are these two things, but there are the transformative nature and the fear of speaking. But there are many differences too, and I suspect that the differences aren't, well, who knows if they're about the experience, but I think that so much of the language you use to speak of things depends on our backgrounds. We understand things in ways that are due to the culture we grow up in, religious and secular. The language we use, the God language we use, if you like, or the spiritual language we use, has so much to do with our culture and our understanding. Even how it's not so much as what we experience, but how we interpret what we experience, how we actually, the lens through which we look at things, the mind, the thinking about these things are not the same. But at the heart of the matter can be the same. We need not think alike to love alike. And this is, but we experience it on a heart level, I guess. So it's just, this is what separates us. Trouble always begins in the naming of things like gods and desires, lines in the sand, to quote that wonderful song that I love. That the problem is when we try and articulate, we're all what that which reveals also hides. Can you see how that separates us? And like religion can do that too, you see, of course, because it's an attempt to understand something in a time and a place. But how can you articulate the true experience? But the language of the heart operates differently. That can be transformative. We can all be transformed. We are transformed by this language of the heart when we open the ears of our hearts and speak with the tongues of our hearts. For this is the language that carries that voice of loving transformation, that can bring about that our lives can change almost in the conversation when we're engaged in it on that heart level, not the head level. We need not think alike to love alike. We touch things that the mind cannot on its own. So that's what I believe, this living in this kind of heart and mind in the spirit of freedom, respect and humility. If we can live this way, a new world, a new vision can come into being. So let's not be held back by what we think we know. Let's open all our senses to the spirit that is alive and present in everything, including us. Let our ears be opened to the language of the heart and spoken from the tongue of each heart. Let us speak the language of the heart in every interaction we experience. For the language of the heart is truly universal. It breaks down any and every barrier and touches and transforms all who have ears to hear. May we listen with the ears of our hearts. May we speak our truth in love. For the language of the heart is universal. Amen. So I'm going to end with some final words of blessing. You know, we need to bless more. We can all bless. We bless when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to life. So may the love that we have known through our days, may it be alive in our hearts and our being. May we carry the vision of that love with us as we once more step back out into the world. May the divine love shine very brightly from our being. And may we carry this spirit with us. And may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Amen.